Hey everyone, let's improve your graphing skills. You will need a pen and paper or pencil and paper to practice along. Please don't just watch with your eyes, okay? So, the agenda is to analyze equilibrium. We will draw demand, supply, and label equilibrium price and quantity. After that, we will look at shifts in the demand curve, then shifts in the supply curve, and then complex shifts. Hope you are prepped for this one. All right, let's start with drawing the demand and supply curves and labeling equilibrium. On the y-axis, we have price. On the x-axis, we have quantity. And the origin, of course, is 0. Now, the origin increases as you move to your right-hand side like that. Okay, so this will be 1, this will be 2, 3, 5, etc. Now, on the y-axis or the price axis, the increase goes that way as you move up. So 1, 5, 10, right? That's how this is going to look like. Now, let me wipe some of these off so that we can do some drawing. So the next thing that we will do is draw the demand and supply curve, and I will use my ruler here to do that. Let's draw the demand curve in blue and the supply curve in red. So demand curve in blue sloping downwards. Let's label the demand curve D0, and then let's draw the supply curve and label it as 0. So like that. Okay, changing my ink to black. The point of intersection between the demand and supply curve, at that point, quantity demanded equals quantity supplied, and we see our equilibrium quantity, Q0, and our equilibrium price, P0. Now, at the point of intersection, see right there, where the demand curve is crossing the supply curve, we don't say demand equals supply. We say quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. Okay? All right. So, well, we have finished this first one. Let's move on to the second one. Let's look at shifts in the demand curve, an increase versus a decrease. Now, I got this started, that way we don't spend too much time on this. Okay, I'm going to show the increase in the demand or the shifts in the demand curve with red ink. Now, an increase in demand is seen as a rightward shift of the demand curve, right? So, well, rightward shift of the demand curve will shift to the right like that. So drawing that demand curve, a parallel line or a line parallel to the demand curve I already have, right? So this new one is D1. And in black, let's examine what has happened to our equilibrium price and our equilibrium quantity. The equilibrium quantity increased from Q0 to Q1, and the equilibrium price also increased from P0 to P1. Okay. What about a decrease in the demand? A decrease in the demand, well, the demand curve will shift to the left, right? So demand shifting to the left is going to look like so. And if we draw a parallel line or a line parallel to D0, we're going to get something like this. So that's D1, and the intersection of our D1, the new demand curve, and our initial supply curve, that intersection is right here where we have Q1 and P1. You can see that there is a decrease in the equilibrium price and a decrease in the equilibrium quantity. So just take a look at this for a minute. An increase in demand results in an increase in the equilibrium price and an increase in the equilibrium quantity. A decrease in demand results in a decrease in the equilibrium price and a decrease in the equilibrium quantity. When you get questions like this on the exam or on an exam, you want to draw it out to see what the results are. It's not very useful to just memorize these, but to learn how to draw them. Okay? All right, let's move on to shifts in the supply curve. Again, I got this started that way we can move through things a little faster. Okay, increase in the supply curve, a rightward shift in the supply curve, shift to the right in the supply curve, right, with my arrow like that. Now I am ready to draw my supply curve as 1. And then I look at where the supply curve, the new supply curve S1, crosses the initial demand curve. I analyze that and I see that my Q1, well, I see an increase in the equilibrium price, and my P1 is here, a decrease in the equilibrium quantity. Great. What about a decrease in supply? What does that look like? A decrease in supply presents as a leftward shift in the supply curve. So in the supply curve, we're going to see a left shift going that way. Okay, let's draw our supply curve shifting to the left. So that would be S1, and analyzing what the effect of this shift is on the equilibrium price and quantity. We see the equilibrium price going up and the equilibrium quantity dropping, right? That's what we see. Again, practice this, drawing this by yourself and analyzing the change in the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. Okay, let's move on to complex shifts. There are 4 types of complex shifts. The first one is we see an increase in demand and an increase in supply. So what is happening here is we are going to put the increase in demand and increase in supply together and look at the total effect on the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity, which is why I put this plus sign here. Okay. All right. So in red, let's analyze the complex shift. If you take a close look at this, I'm analyzing the complex shifts separately. It's a pain to draw an increase in demand and an increase in supply on the same graph. So you want to do them separately and then add up the changes in equilibrium price and quantity. So let's see how to do that. First, an increase in demand. An increase in demand, the demand curve will shift to the right like that. And then using the ruler, we draw the increase in demand right here. Let's call that S1. Changing our ink, let's analyze the change in equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. We see that there is an increase both in equilibrium quantity and an increase in equilibrium price. Okay, great. Again, let's look at an increase in supply. The supply curve will shift to the right like so. And so I use my ruler and in that direction, draw a parallel line and name that line as 1. Okay, look at my intersection between the new supply curve S1 and the initial demand curve D0. So here I have my Q1 and my P1. We see a fall in the equilibrium price and an increase in the equilibrium quantity. And we are ready to write some notes on what the total effect is, putting together the effect of the increase in demand and the effect of the increase in supply. So the total effect. For sure, we see there is an increase in equilibrium quantity. So total effect, equilibrium quantity increases, right? Equilibrium quantity increases. Okay, what about equilibrium price? Well, here we see an increase in the equilibrium price, and there we see a fall in equilibrium price due to the increase in supply. How do we write this? Well, we don't know which change is bigger. Now, if I told you to sum up a positive number and a negative number, but I don't give you the number, you would be confused and you wouldn't know whether the results of adding a positive number and a negative, what happens to the result. You wouldn't know, you see. So we say here there is an ambiguous change in price or in equilibrium price. All right. Let's move on to complex shift. 4B, decrease in demand and decrease in supply. Okay, so say the decrease in demand is here. And the decrease in supply is here. Okay, so using the ruler, we will draw that. Decrease in demand, we see the demand curve shifts to the left. Decrease in supply, we see the supply curve shifts to the left, like that. So let's draw the demand curve decreasing and label that D1. Let's draw the supply curve decreasing and label that S1. Okay, and then let's analyze the effects. You see the intersection here, a fall in equilibrium price and a fall in equilibrium quantity. And right here we see a fall in equilibrium price and an increase in a fall in equilibrium quantity and an increase in equilibrium price. Okay, now what do you think the total effect is? The total effect is that we notice for sure that there is a fall in equilibrium quantity. So equilibrium quantity falls. Equilibrium price, what is happening to equilibrium price? Oh, we have an ambiguous change in equilibrium price. Great. Okay, increase in demand and decrease in supply as a complex shift. Let's analyze that. The demand curve increases with a rightward shift and the supply curve decreases with a leftward shift. So increase in demand, rightward shift, decrease in supply, leftward shift. All right. Let's draw that. Increase in demand. So we have D1 here and decrease in supply. Let's draw that out and then we can analyze it. S1 here, change color and analyze that. Okay. Equilibrium quantity has increased, equilibrium price has increased. Right here in the decrease in supply, equilibrium quantity has fallen, equilibrium price went up. The total effect. You can see that there is overall an increase in equilibrium price. So equilibrium price increases But there is an ambiguous change in equilibrium quantity, because in the increase in demand, we see the equilibrium quantity increasing. In the decrease in supply, we see the equilibrium quantity falling, right? So we don't know which one is bigger than the other, and so we say there is an ambiguous change in equilibrium quantity. All right, and then the final complex shift, a decrease in demand and an increase in supply. Decrease in demand, we see a shift to the left. Increase in supply, we see a shift to the right. Drawing that out, here is our increase in supply. Label it S1. And here is our decrease in demand. Let's label that D1. Now we analyze the total effect, or we analyze the change in the equilibrium, and we see that our equilibrium price fell and our equilibrium quantity fell. Analyzing the increase in supply, we see our equilibrium price fell and our equilibrium quantity went up. The total effect. The total effect, for sure, we notice our equilibrium price fell. So equilibrium price drops or fell. And what is happening to equilibrium quantity? We see an ambiguous change in the equilibrium quantity. An ambiguous change in equilibrium quantity. Probably spelled ambiguous wrong, sorry about that. Okay, so let's go back to our agenda. Looks like we've covered everything we set out to do. The complex shifts, there are 4 of them. And then we see the simple shifts, increase versus a decrease in supply, and an increase versus a decrease in demand. Now, I really hope that you pause the video when necessary and with paper and pen practice these, drawing them by yourself, okay?